Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players of the gigging variety. I'm your host David Holloway and it's great to be back with you again. This episode we have a keyboard player who I think has one of the best cover band gigs in the world. There'll be more on that in the interview, but that's only one string in Chicago-based Ben Lewis's bow. He's also an acclaimed pianist and jazz musician, even doing 2 tours abroad as a jazz ambassador for the US State Department. I know this is becoming a bit of a pattern, but I've known Ben online since the mid-90s and admired his work ever since. But it's a particularly great pleasure to speak with him about his gigging life. Hi Ben, thanks so much for joining us. I'm just a little bit excited about this interview.
Hi, David.
Ben, you won't be aware of this, but in the introduction to this podcast, I've explained how we've known each other online at least for a long period of time. So it's absolutely brilliant to put the voice to the face.
Exactly. Yeah.
And a lot of water's sort of gone under the bridge since, we first met in the early to mid-90s, but I thought it might be nice to start off with you just giving us elevator pitch of you as a musician. Give us your bio just to kick off things.
My bio. Well, I should probably start with my age. I just turned 47, which is unbelievable to me.
Young.
But yeah. Oh, thank you.
It's younger than me.
How old are you?
I'm turning 50 next year, so not far.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm approaching that. But I've been a professional musician, I guess officially since 21. Since getting out of college, and I went to Indiana University and I gave it a shot. I'll try music school, and after the first year, it seemed like a good fit. I enjoyed it, and I got a jazz studies degree, a Bachelor of Music from Indiana University, and was thrust into young adulthood, not really knowing what actually the music business was going to be like. I really didn't. They don't apparently, at least they didn't at the time, teach that part of my degree was not actually learning how to, make a living. But I learned a lot at the school, and I was just excited to move back to Chicago, where my family's from, and just see what would happen. So yeah, 20 plus years later, I'm still doing it.
And so you saw what happened, and I think it's fair to say you've had one hell of a interesting and varied career. And so, going back as far as 2003, I think it's fair to say your most constant gig is the one with the Lieutenant Dan Band. So I'm obviously aware of Lieutenant Dan Band, and I'm guessing a lot of people in the US are, but for our non-US listeners, can you give a little bit of an explanation of the band and what its purpose is?
Yeah, I'll kind of give a little. People are usually curious how I got hooked up with that.
Right.
But I'll start with what the band is. It's called the Lieutenant Dan Band, and I usually start by asking people if they've seen the movie Forrest Gump, which a great many people have. So, as you might expect, Lieutenant Dan is Lieutenant Dan. It's the actor Gary Sinise who played Lieutenant Dan in the movie, and the backstory really is. It's like the music business works. It's you meet one person who will somehow magically years later connect you with another person. And when I was in high school, I was going to some sort of jazz combo class with this gentleman named Kimo Williams in the city. And years later, I'm out of college, and he's writing some music for one of Gary's plays. And long story short, we started having jam sessions. Gary would be in town doing his play, and I got a call one day saying, "Hey, you want to come to my house and jam with Gary Sinise?" I'm like, "Cool, okay." I got a drummer. We got together. We had pizza and beer and played some tunes. And a year later, he was back in town, and we did it again. Now, Gary was starting to do USO tours where he would go abroad and go to a lot of military bases, and wherever he would go, soldiers would call him Lieutenant Dan. And that's just how they identified him, and that character he played as a wounded Vietnam veteran really resonated with a lot of people, a lot of soldiers, a lot of military. So at some point, he just kind of had the idea, like, hey, I know these musicians. Maybe I can put together a band, and the USO would, send me over with a band instead of just shaking hands. We could rock out, and so we put together a band, and it was the Lieutenant Dan band. And I thought it would maybe last a couple years, and then maybe you get tired of it or start doing movies or something. But it just really grew over the years, and it's been 14 years now of being in the Lieutenant Dan band, which is a cover band. We play a pretty wide variety of stuff. It's some country, some current pop, some old pop, rock. What else? Just a mix, basically, to appeal to as much of the audience as some for the kids, some for the adults and older people. So that's how I got into it, and it's just been a real blessing because what it's turned into is really a great source of support for people who deserve it. We do a lot of shows to raise money for veterans who are really, really badly wounded. And Gary has a foundation now, which you can check out, GarySiniseFoundation.org. So many great programs he's doing now. We raise money to build homes, smart homes for wounded veterans, supporting first responders. And we just played our last show of the year in Orlando for something called Snowball Express, which is an amazing 3-day event where American Airlines flies all these kids out to Disney World and shows them a good time for a couple of days with their families. And we play a concert. Every single kid there in the audience has lost a parent or a sibling to their service to the war and to war. And so it's basically a big support kind of mission. And so things like that, I just really am proud to be part of with the band. And I'm just going to keep doing it as long as he wants to.
That's right. So, I mean, the passion for you is obviously still there. And I mean, I've watched a lot of videos over the last few years of Gary himself, and you can tell that, he's passionate about the cause. Well, it's an, underestimation probably. So, I can't see it stopping anytime soon from what I can see.
Yeah, he's legit. It's kind of funny. People will ask me, is he a nice guy? People usually want to know that of someone who's famous or celebrity, or they want to know that they seem like they're a good guy, but are they really?
Yeah.
And I can say emphatically that he really is. He's extremely passionate about this. This has sort of become his life's mission.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be given all the time he does to this if that wasn't the case. So.
And again, this is purely based on what I see as a member of the public, but it seems like he's also modest enough to realise he can absolutely play himself. But is it correct you're the musical director as far as he understands it, the actual mechanics of a band that size and the scope of your repertoire, that he's obviously not trying to cope with all that on his own?
I mean, he's he's a good bass player. I can tell you honestly, if he was a terrible bass player, I wouldn't have kept doing it because that would have been a drag. But no, he learns the music, he memorizes it, and we're all off book, and we very rarely get to have a rehearsal. Once in a while, we'll try to arrange something like that when we're all in the same place. But we try to update the songs every year or so and keep adding new material. But my role is to just make sure things are running smoothly and people are playing the right things. And but it's just kind of like a family. There's no egos, there's none of that. And we're all there's a lot of friendship and respect within the band. So there's just none of that drama you might expect with a large band. We all have a real good time.
No, that's great. And with the USO stuff, so you've I believe toured overseas a handful of times, or even more than that?
Ooh, well, with the Lieutenant Dan band, we've been to Korea a number of times, South Korea and Japan and Germany a few times. That's mainly the overseas stuff. Some kind of random things to a gig in Kuwait and Afghanistan. I did not go. I had just been married, and my wife was not thrilled with me spending our first Thanksgiving in a war zone. No. And I had traveled enough at that point. I was like, you know what? I can sit this one out. But yeah, the band's been in Afghanistan and a couple other places. But there's a lot of domestic travel, a lot to Los Angeles or Dallas and Colorado, and just wherever there's usually where there's a base, which
Yeah,
apparently there are a lot of military bases.
yeah, yeah. And do you have some particular memorable moments from either your overseas or even domestic tours? Some things that really stood out for you?
Well, with that band, it's just there's been some interesting stuff. I've been a few times to the DMZ, which is a
Ah,
pretty trippy experience. Borderline just kind of creepy. But that's been interesting. And some of my other travel though I've done outside of the 10 Dam Band has been a little more actually cool. I've done a couple tours for an organization that used to be called Jazz Ambassadors, and it was run by the U.S. State Department in coordination with both the Kennedy Center and the Lincoln Center, I believe, later. But what they do is I don't know if the program is still running, but they would audition groups. You'd submit some material. They would select the first time they select a trio. So they would select a trio and send them to, in our case, West Africa. So I got to travel through West Africa for 5 weeks with the trio, and we had to bring our
amazing.
equipment, and it was totally amazing. Yeah, I went to 5 countries through West Africa, and a few years later, auditioned again and went with a quartet to East Asia. So we got to go to Pakistan and Indonesia and Bangladesh, Vietnam, and so all those experiences I think were a big highlight of my career, and feel very, very lucky that as a musician I've been able to travel as much as I have. I've never done a cruise ship. I've never done anything like that. All my travel has been pretty remarkable. I think I'm quite blessed in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll probably get onto it a little bit later with your rig and any overseas challenges with that. But I mean, you mentioned the size of the band, particularly Lieutenant Dan Band, and your role there as a bit of a coordinating influence. How do you pull it off? And I don't mean in graphic detail, but I mean, you said you're off book, which is, impressive on its own in a lot of ways. And you are learning new songs. I'm assuming you're just coordinating things, via email and so on, all learning, in the right key. And then when you do get together, having a quick run through. But, how do you pull off that coordination?
Typically, if we're adding new songs, we will try to schedule a day where we can get to the venue a day early, or LA or something, and organize a band rehearsal. My role is I'm the chart guy, so I'll be doing the arrangements and
Yeah.
writing horn parts and uh, putting all together in that way. What's going to work? Rely a lot on the musicians to kind of help me figure out some of the minutia of, for example, what the percussion player is going to do, or what vocal harmonies are going to work best, because we have 5 singers and have
Yeah.
a lot of options of that. But yeah, I over the years I've gotten very good at chart writing. I'm very quick at it. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy just getting into the weeds of how's this going to sound, and it's a lot of work. But we don't add new songs very often, so once in a while I will
Yeah.
just dive into that. But yeah, we spend a lot of time in sound checks. We take the time during sound checks to run things and fix things and just tweak things that need tweaking.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
And when you're up there, what is your main live rig that, your go-to rig that you pretty much drag out for most gigs?
It's getting old. I backline for that band because we're just kind of all over. And
Yeah.
back in the day, I used to have a Yamaha Motif
Oh yeah.
ES at home. I had an ES7 that I used for I don't know, like 14 years or something. It was literally held together by duct tape
Yeah.
at some point, or gaff tape.
That's
And
great.
I had to try to gaff it in like a streamlined way where it kind of looked cool, but it was falling apart literally. And so I finally, you know, got rid of that recently. But a lot of the sounds I programmed for the band, I did on the Motif. So I backline a Motif ES8, which
Oh yeah.
is pretty common. But even that's starting to get a little old, and some of the ones I get have got some issues, and I'm recognizing it's probably time to upgrade that. Actually, we're playing a show next month in the Dominican Republic, which I've never been there,
Okay.
and they don't have any ES8s. They have the XF,
Okay.
Motif XF, and I imagine it's pretty similar, but I don't know how well my sounds will
Yeah.
transfer.
Translate. Yeah.
So I think my plan right now is to rent one locally and just see what I'm dealing with. So that the option B would be for me to use main stage and
Yeah.
have, and the reason that there are some issues just with the programming is there are some songs that do use samples, and I've sort of maxed out the motif with just how I lay out different samples on the motif, and it works.
Yeah.
But it takes like 7 minutes to load the show, on the keyboard, and main stage ideally would be a better way to go.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm secretly liking just not having to bring all that on the flights, and I can just have it all load, and it's good to go.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I mean, I'm a heavy main stage user, but I still there's no science behind it. But I just get so paranoid that it's not going to work on the night, and so yeah, I'm a bit of I prefer it in the hardware still.
Okay.
But yeah, look, motifs. I mean, so obviously there's. So you might find you might transition to what montages or Modi X's down the track, or just see what happens.
Well, it's hard because unless I actually have one in my hands,
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't really have time to program one in a sound check.
No.
And yeah, I think if the XF works out, then and those looks like those will be available. I'm gonna need to talk to the backline companies we use and see what they have. But it would be nice to use a board that has some updated, piano and whatnot. I also use a Nord Electro, whatever they try to get the latest one, but usually it's like a 4D or a 5D, and but I mainly do organ on that. That's a little bit of Rhodes, but it's mainly for the organ. But my favorite thing to use is and I convinced Gary to get me one. I already have one at home, but it's tied up to my little main stage rack at home. So I really wanted one that I could bring on the road, and it's are you hip to the Neo Ventilator?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, so I got a Neo Ventilator 2 that I love. I just love that thing. So I bring a little half moon switch, and I gaff tape that to the front panel on the Nord or front edge of the Nord, and just the vent sits really nicely actually right on top of the Nord.
Yeah.
And just brings the organ much more to life in a way that sounds great with the band, and it's a little more fun for me.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. So really, it's really a two keyboard rig.
Oh yeah. I mean, the motif. Yeah, I can't do organ on the motif.
No. No, great stuff. And so with that rig, like I said, it sounds like it was reliable from the viewpoint. Yes, you got the motif to the extent of needing to be gaffer taped, but it did what you want, coped in all the conditions. Any big memories of where you had to do something pretty impressive on the fly to make it work?
For my home motif, well, what I liked about what I liked about it is there was a nice little panel just on the left side where actually I sat my laptop. So I actually had my laptop sitting right on the keyboard. And that, over time, as I got more and more into main stage, I more and more just used the sounds on main stage. I used the piano on the motif, and sometimes would layer things. But I liked how easy it was to have the MIDI capability of the motif with the laptop, and but yeah, it was just getting ugly and didn't look professional. So I really struggled with what to replace it with. I'm still not sure I made the right choice, but I went with the Nord Stage 3 Compact.
Oh, yep.
And it took some getting used to. My first reaction was like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah.
But I've been getting used to it and actually having a lot of fun with it. And it took me a while to get it really synced well with main stage, but that's actually working out now pretty well.
Yeah, good.
And So that's my current my current keyboard.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, going back a bit, do you recall what your first serious keyboard was that you owned? Whether it was
Yes.
so what was it?
Oh, my Roland D50.
Ah, look, you're bringing a tear to my. I dreamt of having a
Uh,
roller D50.
it was a hard choice between the DX7 and a
Yeah.
Roland D50. Those were like those were the
Oh
two
yeah.
hot commodities. And I think I was in high school.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the Roland D50 just seemed cooler and like more advanced or something, with the way it was kind of a revolutionary.
Oh, was it ever?
I should say, like, I don't consider myself a synth keyboard guy at all.
No.
Like my knowledge is thin at best, really. I know I learned to use what I have,
Yeah.
but I look at some of my friends and who just really are synth players in my mind. The way they understand how to shape sounds but the D50 for me, I liked making my own sounds with that thing,
Yeah.
and I remember playing one of my first jazz, like, I don't know, piano gigs or something, like at somebody's backyard party. I was like, I don't know, sophomore in high school or something. That piano sound was terrible.
Yeah.
I just, oh God, awful. But I did it.
Yeah.
I did, and I had fun with that keyboard. I think I ended up selling it at some point because it needed a lot of work done, and
That's the thing.
I wish I still had it now, but I the Roland D50. The next one after that was a Yamaha
Oh,
SY85,
yep. Yep.
which I remember I had a floppy disk drive, so I would load my special piano sample.
Yeah.
It took 4 disks and about 10 minutes to load that, but it was worth it to me because it sounded better than
That's
what
right.
was on the board. So that was sort of my, when you live in Chicago, and the way to make a living here is, we call it jobbing. So
Yeah.
in LA it's called casuals, but so I did a lot of weddings. I joined a wedding band and
Yeah.
make
Okay.
good money doing that. So I needed a board like that. It could just do a bunch of different
Cover the
sounds, and
bases. Yeah.
eventually I added a Korg CX3 organ
Oh,
because
yeah.
I really wanted. I was playing in about 20 years ago. I joined a band that does Carlos Santana
Oh,
music.
yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
rock band here in Chicago called Rico. That's a great band, really great. Still going too. And so I started. I would bring out 2 keyboards to wedding gigs, which in retrospect, like, what was I thinking? 'Cause back then, the amplifiers were so heavy, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in fairness, now I understand why I had a hernia, years ago, and it's because of it's ridiculous what I used to carry around.
Yeah.
It's so much easier now.
That's right. And you raise a good point too. You've mentioned just the Santana band, and then also obviously your jazz background and your studies. You obviously play a range of genres. Is it fair to what would you say your core passion is? Is jazz your core passion, or just because you feel more comfortable in that genre, or maybe none of the above?
No, absolutely. Jazz. I'm a jazz musician. I'm a
Yeah.
jazz pianist through and through. What I tell young people who are studying is, learn jazz, learn the harmonic intricacies of that music and the theory. And if you can do that, you can play anything. And I gradually got into Latin jazz. There was a big Latin jazz scene in Chicago a decade or more ago. And so I really got into playing that, and then of course learning, Carlos's music, and I was kind of self-taught with the B3. I never had a lesson. So my first recording session with this vocalist I still work with, Jackie Allen, intimidated because they wanted me to play the B3, and I never even touched one.
Yeah.
And I just was like pulling levers and switching. I had so much fun though.
Just to take a bit of a tangent, did you find that a religious experience? And I'll set that up a little bit as far as through the arrogance of youth, or even into my 30s, I was asked to do a quick recording session, and it was in a studio that had a B3. And I'd never played one either, and I'd had my organ patches set up on whatever I was playing at the time, and I thought, well, the patches now are so good nowadays. How could the B3 be any better? And it obviously had the Leslie there, and then from the moment I put my hands on that thing, I went, okay, now I understand.
Well, in the moment, I wouldn't say it was religious. It was more I was nervous.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to do a good job, and
Yeah.
but when I listen to it, I can hear it. It sounds to me like someone who, not that they don't know what they're doing, but just that it doesn't sound safe. Like I'm doing some fun things with it.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was what it was. It was. I wouldn't say it was religious. No.
No, I mean that's my exaggeration, but I had never experienced. And, just the Leslie speaker right there, and you're feeling the Leslie. And it was like, okay, I was such an arrogant turd, so to speak, thinking my digital rig could replicate this.
I think, once you hear that, and then you're trying to replicate that in your own rig, it's kind of a letdown when you're trying to get that out of your keyboard, or which is what's great about how good things have gotten. In the keyboard world with, clone organs and everything.
Yes.
I'm still wanting to get better. I like the Nord, but I really want to. I'm looking to maybe just get a dedicated organ clone, like a Krumar, or even say Hammond. I just want to get my hands on them to try them out.
That's right,
and that would be nice.
And sorry, and I took you off on a tangent there from the fact that jazz is your passion. But I mean, if anyone does check out your bio, you've done a significant amount of work in that area, and you have you got some plans for the future to continue? But any particularly exciting plans you've got?
I mean, I've been a sideman for decades.
Yeah.
That's kind of the course of my life professionally has it's changed over time. Lieutenant Dan band. So all these different things I'm doing in my life that felt like, okay, I'm successful. I've got a good income, and but what I regret is not really pushing my own musicality.
Right.
In those days, I was just so focused on doing things for other people and playing that role, which keyboard players can do. They can, studio work and all these opportunities. I think for keyboard players, for me, I'm only now really looking at my own music and composing, and I have my own trio that I'm gradually, booking at different places, and so that's been great. I've had some steady, just club work that I've been doing, and just being able to be at a piano every week with different musicians, just improvising. It's really my greatest love. But the other facet is just I'm also a stay-at-home dad. I got two boys. I've got a very lucky. I'm very lucky. I have a wonderful, wonderful spouse, my wife Abigail, who is a senior conservation ecologist at the Field Museum of Chicago.
Okay.
And so she has a great gig. So I'm lucky. I got insurance, which. Oh, just that alone, just having that safety net is wonderful, and just having a partner who is so incredibly supportive of me and my music. But I love my kids, and when you have kids, do you actually have kids?
Yeah, I do. I've got two teenagers. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, mine are like 6 and 8. So
great age. Yeah.
But it's like that becomes your world, and the nice thing about the Lieutenant Dan band is I don't travel so much that it's a real drag on my family life. It's just enough that we can handle it. I think if it was a lot more, that would probably be an issue for me. But as it is, it works out.
Yeah.
I don't see myself I don't know what my jazz career, what future that has right now. It's hard to say. I don't necessarily see I think my touring days might be behind me, at least right now.
Yeah.
But I'm open to, I think, what might happen.
And I think feel free to disagree. I feel as you get older, the any appeal that touring does have fades pretty damn quickly as you get older, particularly with a family. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that some of the bigger at least in the jazz world, some of the bigger artists that, you know, even just pianists. I'm thinking. I remember meeting a pianist. Man, I'm forgetting his last name. His first name is Eldar. He's quite amazing. But I got to meet him once, and just him describing how often he was on the road
Yeah,
was very daunting to me. But that's what you have to do to
that's
promote your
right.
record. And I haven't even done my own record. And honestly, it's like it's one of those things that life. You ever use the expression "life gets in the way"?
Yes,
I can remember many moments where okay, like before my second child is born, I got to do this record,
that's right.
and then life got in the way, and it doesn't happen.
No, that's right.
So life always seems to be getting in the way, but like I said, I'm writing now. I'm writing things I actually like, and I think it could happen
Yeah, I know. I hope it does.
before I'm 50 like you.
And for you as a player, I mean, every player, I believe, anyway, feels they can always learn something more. What's one thing you wish you could do better as a player?
That's a good question. I mean, just my fundamentals. That's not a word.
It can be now.
It is. It's going to be a word. Fundamentals. Uh, I wish my fundamentals were stronger, and part of it, my lazy excuse is finding time to practice. But
Yeah,
I am kind of looking forward to my kids being more in full day
yeah,
school.
yeah.
As it is, I only have a couple hours in the morning before my kindergartner gets home, and it's a little tougher.
Yeah.
But the laundry's not going to do itself.
No.
So, but I think having I have good facility. I'm actually quite happy with my technique, but I think shedding more just with that would be, open up some other creative doors for me. But I think I'm focused on composing, and, I'd like to learn more from others. It's a crazy time we live in with all these
Mm,
virtual lessons you can have.
that's right.
And I haven't tried doing that myself. I have downloaded some videos from um, one artist I like, but I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to connect more with some my peers and just see how their mind
Yeah,
works
yeah.
and learn, because I do enjoy that.
No, good stuff. And just mentioning on players you like, I mean, who would you list as some of your key keyboard or pianist or jazz inspirations?
Oh man. Okay. It's hard. A lot of what I've learned I haven't done from a lot of people transcribe and that kind of thing. I'm a little bit more self-taught with, I think, my own voice.
Yeah.
The pianists that I've listened to over time are like pianists like Bill Evans or
Oh,
Oscar
yeah.
Peterson or Herbie Hancock, the stuff everyone would name. There's pianists I admire. There's so many incredible pianists creating music today.
Yeah.
Just it's unbelievable, and it's so easy to gain access to them. You used to have to drive or ride your bike to the local record store and
That's
get a
right.
tape or CD or listen to the radio, and it's just so easy now. And I don't know. I think who knows where I'd be if I'd had access to that much at an earlier age. But
Well, it's an interesting point, that one you've just made, as far as whether that would have enhanced things or actually made things muddier. Because I quite often
huh,
wonder about that, that if you had the access that we all do nowadays when you're in your formative years, would it have helped or hindered? It's an impossible question to know.
it is impossible. I think there's complete overstimulation of our senses, with this world we live in today, and speaking through the eyes of a father and having two kids who are gradually being exposed to the world of screens, and we're trying to
Yeah.
limit that as much as we can. But yeah, it is a bit of information overload, I would say. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. I'll have to give
Yeah.
that one some thought.
No, it's a deep philosophical question.
I get lost in YouTube though. I start YouTubing different. Oh, who's that pianist? I'll just YouTube him,
Yes.
and instantly, yeah. There's that sort of insecurity that I think players can go through. You start comparing yourself to other people. It's a dangerous, slippery
It
slope.
is. I'm hearing you. And as a B to C grade cover musician, I find YouTube an absolute godsend for learning new songs. But you're right, the comparison thing does hurt. Hurts a lot.
I'm old enough that I try not to do that.
No.
I am who I am.
That's
I'm
right.
actually happy with what I do in my own voice. I feel like I have a unique.
Yeah.
I have something to say, and maybe I can't say it as fast as or with as many fingers as some artists out there, uh, but the artists that are really creating amazing stuff, they're also dedicating so much time and
That's
commitment
right.
to that music that's just not my life right now.
That's exactly right.
It may very well become that, but I'm just waiting for my midlife crisis, which
Yeah.
I think is that coming soon? A couple years?
I think so. Although I don't know that I've hit mine. I think you may have had it earlier. Maybe I don't know.
Okay.
Now we always finish up, Ben, with a cliche question, but our listeners do like, and that's what are 5 desert island discs? What are 5 albums that if you could only take them or could only recommend 5, what would they be?
I knew this was coming because I did listen to your
Yeah.
previous guest, and I panicked a little bit because I don't take a lot of time to listen
No.
to albums in a long time, really. So I gave it some thought. So I'm going to give you your 5 answers,
Yep.
and you're just going to have to deal with it because this is what I
That's
got.
good.
All right. I'll start with Brad Mehldau. I really love Brad. I'm a great admirer of his way of playing. I think he's brilliant technique and just brilliant, sensitive heart and mind and how he approaches the piano. And he has an album called Art of the Trio, Volume 1, and there's
Okay.
a number of songs on there that really speak to me. And I'll give a quick story about Brad because I got to give Brad a shout. Do you know about my accident?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I wasn't
Okay.
sure you'd want to talk about it, so I haven't mentioned it, but yes, I am.
Well, I'll do a quick summary. 3 years ago, around this last month, I fell off my roof. Had finished cleaning my gutters, coming down the ladder. Something went horribly wrong. I hit the concrete, and a lot of bad stuff came from that. I woke up in the hospital, and I was in the hospital for a month. But I was very, very, very fortunate to recover from some pretty big injuries, and didn't break any fingers, thank God. But came out of the hospital, in a lot of pain and needing to recover from that for a few months. I was very lucky. If you're listening, you got a house, you got gutters, hire someone to do
Pay
it.
someone to do it, yeah.
I'm not kidding. Like, I just hear all the time of people who died from that,
Yeah.
and I'm extremely lucky. But long story short, one morning I came out of the kitchen. There was this envelope from B. Mehldau, and I was like, "What?" I opened it up, and there's a bunch of signed CDs from Brad Mehldau,
Oh, wow.
and a little hand scrawled note from him saying, "Hey, heard you had a bad fall, and hope you get back to playing soon. All the best." And it's baffled me, like, how did Brad Mehldau hear about my accident? But it just goes to show you what a good guy I think he must be, because it turns out a coworker of my wife at the Field Museum, his wife, I believe it was his wife, is like a childhood or maybe high school friend of Brad.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, friend of a friend told Brad, and he took the time. It really
brilliant.
meant a lot. I was having a bad day, and just for him to take the
Yeah.
time to share his new music with me was great. So,
It's amazing.
and he's great. So Brad Mehldau. There's another pianist I really admire. His name's Tigran Hamasyan. He's American Armenian, and is really doing amazing stuff. He has a couple albums that I haven't even had time to fully explore, but
Okay.
one is Shadow Theater. There's another one called Makrut, and he really incorporates traditional Armenian like folk music with jazz and prog rock,
Okay,
and
that sounds great.
he's just a brilliant pianist on top of that. So I think I could listen to that on Desert Island.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I might pick an album from my past. What I love about music is how, it can transport you. You can hear a song and it can take you back to part of your youth. And for
Absolutely.
me, I was thinking, and I remember this album by Pat Metheny called Secret Story,
Right.
that this was really interesting. And I picked it up and I was in college. So I'm like 20, 19, 20 years old. And I just remember listening to that a lot.
Yeah.
And
And he's still going strong.
he is actually our drummer. Danny Gottlieb and the Lieutenant Dan Band toured for quite a few years with Pat. So I need two more, right? I'll make this quick.
Yeah, that's all right.
All right, I'll pick one that I'm on. That is a cool record. It's called By a Little Light. It's an album by a local bassist here, composer named Matt Ulery
Okay.
in Chicago, and he is. I think it's fair to say he's pretty prolific at this point. He's always coming out with records and just composing, and they're all very unique. This was an interesting record where he first recorded the trio, so piano, bass, drums in the studio, playing his music, and there's improvisation, there's through composed things, and then he recorded two different trios. So like I'm on half the tracks and
Okay.
the pianist is on the other tracks, but then he brought in members from an ensemble called Eighth Blackbird, which is a Grammy nominated or maybe Grammy winning, I'm not sure, Chicago band of just incredible classical players who do ridiculously hard contemporary
Okay.
classical music. But so we had just a bunch of those instruments record over the trio. And it ends up being just a very kind of cinematic experience listening to this album and mixed with jazz. And so that's something I'm pretty proud to be part of. My last one, I would just pick a piece. One of my favorite classical pieces is the Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto Number 2.
There you go.
Adagio sostenuto, and it's just a gorgeous piece. I love closing my eyes and just listening to that often.
And see, I feel this is a selfish part of the podcast because every single person recommends some great stuff. Then I go, well, I get to go and listen to that now. So that's always appreciated. And so do our listeners,
Oh,
which
good.
is great. So, look, Ben, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. As I said, I mean, obviously the Lieutenant Dan Band takes up a significant proportion of your musical time, but it's an understatement to say you've got many, many more strings to your bow than that. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to hearing much, much more from you over the coming decades, many decades.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Ben Lewis. He's certainly a guy that's gone from strength to strength and will continue to do so in future years, I have no doubt. So in a few weeks, we'll be back with episode 4. Our guest for episode 4, we move a little bit north of the US to Canada. And a guy that has a range of gigs, including a jazz metal gig. But more on that in episode 4. In the meantime, just a reminder that you can keep in touch with us via a few means. Our website is at www.keyboardchronicles.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Keyboard Chronicles or on Twitter at the Keyboard CHR1. If you like good old-fashioned email, then do drop us a line at editor@keyboardchronicles.com. And I did want to thank those that have emailed and given feedback via email or other social media platforms. It really does make a difference to what we're doing. So thanks so much again for listening, and I'll see you back next episode.